This man's day was shaken up when he encountered a young horse in trouble. It was running around the highway, a danger to itself and the traffic. The man couldn't just stand by idle and decided to act, but he couldn't have expected what would happen after he rescued the young horse. But before we start our story, smash the like button. Make sure to subscribe and hit the notifications bell so you won't miss any new stories. Otis enjoyed his day off driving through the countryside in his new car. It was early in the day, and the weather was good. It seemed like he was the only one off work, as it was pretty calm on the road. But he was unaware that his peaceful ride would soon be rudely interrupted. That peace and quiet caused him to zone out while driving. He was moving his head to the beat of the music while jamming his fingers on the steering wheel. This all came to a surprising end when, all of a sudden, something jumped in front of his car and startled him. Otis's reflexes were on point as he immediately braked as hard as he could while swerving away from the thing that had appeared out of thin air. No bumps or sounds indicated he had hit it, which led him to believe he had avoided it. After slowing down and parking his car next to a billboard on the side of the road, he took a few deep breaths and held his head. That was close. What was it? He took some time to recover while looking in his mirrors, but he didn't see anything, which made him exit his car. After he got out, he was surprised to see what had jumped in front of his car. There was a foal roaming free, running over the highway and crossing multiple times. Both Otis and the horse were fortunate to have missed each other. But what was it doing out here all alone? He scanned his surroundings to try and answer the question that went through his mind. "What are you doing here, little buddy?" he murmured to the horse. The young horse kept running around the highway. It clearly didn't care that it had just been moments away from being run over. While making his way over to the young horse, Otis ensured that no traffic was coming their way. The same, unfortunately, couldn't be said about the foal, because instead of calmly crossing, it moved frantically toward the crash barrier. The foal suddenly stayed around the same spot. This was the moment Otis had been waiting for. He immediately grabbed this opportunity and carefully approached the young horse. While taking small steps, he held out his hand and said, "Come here, buddy. No need to worry." Then he saw something. Another horse approached them from the other side of the barrier, moving around frantically. "That's your mom, isn't it?" he said to the foal. There was nothing wrong with the young horse, it just missed its mom. Otis wanted to help them get back with each other and looked around. There was still no one to be seen, so he needed to do this alone, not knowing that choosing to help the horse would turn his day upside down. Since the mother arrived, the foal wasn't running around anymore. It wanted to stay close to its mother. Otis used the opportunity to approach the young horse, and eventually he got close enough to pick it up to try and lift it over the barrier. But then something unpredictable happened. Right before he could lift the young horse over the barrier, the mother whinnied loudly and jumped over the crash barrier. Otis groaned and puffed while trying to keep the foal in his hands. The sudden action of the mother had startled him. "What are you doing?" he exclaimed toward the mother. Now the mom was on the same side as her baby. She started moving around aggressively. He was worried that the mother saw him as a threat and slowly backed off while gently putting the young horse down. Once the young horse's feet touched the ground, it ran toward its mother immediately. Otis had hoped this would mean they would stop moving around frantically and aggressively, but that wasn't the case. The young horse started to run around again, and it looked like it was trying to get his mother to follow. Otis sighed. This isn't good. He realized his problem had doubled because two horses were running on the highway. It was already dangerous if someone would hit the young horse, never mind if someone hit the mother. He couldn't just let them run around freely and had to think of something. Realizing there was nothing else he could do, Otis shrugged his shoulders. "Here goes nothing," he muttered as he slowly but surely approached the horses, now standing at the crash barrier again. They were easily frightened, so he did his best not to do anything sudden that would scare them. But then, his eyes were fixed on the two horses in front of him, but he could see movement in the corner of his eyes. "What now?" he sighed. Otis ensured he was at a safe distance before looking at what was going on. To his surprise, even more horses were coming their way, looking panicked. Since he stopped his car at the side of the road, the surprises had been piling up. But the situation reached a whole new level now. What was going on? Why were all these horses so stressed? He put his hands on his back and stretched himself. "What now?" he muttered. "Where is your owner?" he said. There had to be someone who noticed all these horses gathered at this crash barrier at the edge of the pasture, right? He made his way to the barrier and gazed into the field behind, but he didn't see anything. Or what was that? Although he couldn't see anything, Otis swore he could hear something. It was vague at first, but it became increasingly louder. He turned his head in the wind to listen better, and then it clicked. Those were dogs barking, and they were coming closer. He let out a sigh of relief. He immediately realized why the horses were so panicked. When the dogs came too close, the horses scattered. All that sudden movement frightened the mom and young horse, which caused them to jump back over the barrier. Otis shook his head and couldn't hold his laugh as he realized his efforts happened to be pointless. Now the horses were back in the pasture. Otis could return to his car and drive off, but something made him stay. The dogs indicated there was someone around. He hoped the owner would be nearby so he could tell him the horses escaped the pasture, not knowing where this decision would eventually lead him. He looked up to the clear blue sky and noticed quite some time had passed. It was a lovely day, and he wasn't in a hurry, so he looked over the pasture again for some sign of movement. But then something made him duck to the ground and rethink everything. A loud noise had ruptured the peace and quiet. Otis had instinctively ducked when he heard it, as he knew exactly what it was. "What the hell?" he said. Someone had fired a gun close by. He watched the horses pass and saw them running toward the forest at the pasture's edge. Otis was still ducked down onto the ground when he tried to pinpoint exactly where the gunshot had come from. He was wiping away some of the dust that had gotten on his face when he saw it. There was some movement in the pasture. "I don't think that's the owner," Otis grumbled. He had slightly gotten up to see what was moving, but when he saw what it was, he ducked back down immediately. Someone was walking along the pasture in camouflaged clothing, and that person was holding a gun. This situation had just become much weirder. Unaware things would take an even more unexpected turn. Otis carefully checked around to make sure he was out of hearing range. "What is going on?" he mumbled under his breath. This couldn't be the owner. Which farmer uses a gun to herd his horses? Why did he shoot the gun when he had dogs? He didn't trust the situation. Because he parked his car over by the billboard, it was hidden pretty well. Due to this, the dogs and the person in camouflage had yet to notice him, and he would like to keep it that way. He grunted lightly when he got up to take a good look at the situation. The dogs followed the horses toward the forest, and the camouflaged person looked around the pasture. He seemed to nod satisfactorily, and he also made his way toward the woods. Did the person want the horses at the edge of the pasture? Why? Otis looked over and saw something in the distance. Did he see some glimpses of movement? Or was it just the wind blowing through the trees? Otis moved his hand to block the sunlight from his eyes and gazed into the distance. Now, he saw the horses at the pasture's edge moving around, but that wasn't all. There seemed to be something else going on, but he couldn't make out what exactly. Otis checked the field for the camouflage person and saw he was nowhere near him anymore. Feeling safe, he rushed to his car to get his binoculars. Through the lenses, he spotted a large group of people at the forest's edge herding the horses in a tight circle. Behind them, partly hidden by the trees, stood several cages. He lowered the binoculars, stunned, then looked again. The truth hit him. This wasn't the owner. This was a coordinated horse theft. Frozen, Otis didn't know what to do. His heart pounded so hard he couldn't steady his hands. The group appeared to be finishing up and getting ready to leave. If he called the police now, they'd be gone before help could arrive. Frustrated, he squeezed the binoculars and glanced at his car. A plan was forming. With one last look at the thieves moving away, he got into his vehicle and turned it around. The road was still quiet, giving him a chance to follow unnoticed. Gripping the steering wheel tightly, Otis drove on, trusting they hadn't seen him. Eventually, he caught sight of 4 large vehicles pulling wagons. He slowed down to avoid suspicion, but before he could think of his next step, the car stopped at a gas station. Panicked, Otis parked nearby and tried to look casual. He watched them out of the corner of his eye as they fueled their cars. Knowing it would look strange if he just sat there, he decided to enter the station shop. But before he walked in, he overheard someone say, "The boss wants us to take them to the Sanchez Ranch before midday." Otis froze in place. That was the information he needed. He quickly bought an item from the shop and returned to his car, keeping an eye on the group. His hands trembled as he called the police. While the phone rang, the thieves drove off. He tossed the phone on speaker and started the engine, explaining the situation while following the vehicles. After about 30 minutes, the group turned onto a dirt road marked Sanchez Ranch. Otis stayed back and waited for the police, pacing anxiously. Finally, they arrived. Otis pointed out the main building where the thieves had gathered. With sirens blaring, the police stormed the ranch. The thieves were caught completely off guard. A large team of officers quickly secured the area and arrested everyone involved. As the situation was brought under control, another man arrived, dressed in riding gear and a large white hat. He wasn't a police officer. As he watched the arrests, his eyes met Otis's, and he smiled. He approached and introduced himself as the horse's rightful owner. The man was overwhelmed with gratitude and hugged Otis, thanking him for saving his horses from a terrible fate. As a gesture of appreciation, he invited Otis to the horse races. Otis put his hands in his pockets and shuffled around. He didn't know what to do with all the praise, but eventually accepted the offer with a quiet smile.